Hey class, we're going to do some more cool things with QGIS. And what I'd like you to do is download the newest version of QGIS. The most stable one right now is 3.16.2. And when you download that, I want you to open it with grass. So that makes some of our functions work appropriately. So when you open up the desktop version, make sure you're opening the one with grass rather than without grass. So I'll let that load. We're going to open our empty project. And let's add in our layer. Let's add in that NLCD layer. So it's a raster. So you go to Add Raster, and you will navigate over to your correct folder where you're holding your NLCD. You're going to click on that image file. Now remember, you need to have cleaned up the file name and the pathway to the file so that there's no spaces and no special characters. So we use a lot of underscores. So you click on that image, you hit open and add. Don't worry about this message that pops up. We're going to cancel out of this and assign it the coordinate reference system right now. So we'll right click, we'll go down to layer CRS and set layer CRS. And they used the Albers system, the continental US, CONUS, C-O-N-U-S. You'll start typing that up. So CONUS Albers, they had a datum of NAD 83. So you'll click on that, go to OK, and let's right click on it to zoom to layer. And let's add in our street map to make sure we're in the right place. And again, we can cancel when we see that message. And indeed, we see that we are in the state of Maryland. We will move our street map below just to make sure. So I'll turn it on and off so you can see we are in the state of Maryland. So let's do some things with this. First of all, let's project it to UTMs because we use that quite a bit. And there's a couple ways you can get to this. One way is by going up to raster and then going to projections. And we're going to reproject it from that CONUS Albers system over to UTMs. That's one way to get to it. Another is you can go to the toolbar. And even if you didn't have your processing toolbar open, if your map looked like this, you can go to processing and click on the toolbar and it'll come up. You could start searching for the word projection and you'd look for your options for rasters. So either way, you're going to see this warp reproject. So we're going to click on that, navigate to that NLCD file. So the source coordinate reference system, so remember that original was the CONUS. So let's turn that off. And for filter, we'll start typing CONUS and we see NAD 83. We hit OK. We want it to go to UTM zone 18. So we turn this off, start typing in UTM, and we see that we picked the one NAD 83 as the datum. Then we want to save this newly reprojected raster. So we go to these three dots, save to file, and we want to make sure we're in our NLCD folder. Now let's call it NLCD underscore UTM. We hit save and hit run. It'll pull that up and add it as a new layer when it's done. Then we can close out. So just to tidy up, let's remove the layer we don't need. So we don't need NLCD. We can remove that one. And we don't need our street map anymore. We know where we are. We can remove that layer as well by right-clicking and removing it. Okay, so now we've projected to UTMs. So let's say we are interested just in the parts of Maryland that are agriculture lands. So of the land out of all those land classes, we want just the ones that are agriculture. Let me pull up the legend to show you. So here's NLCD's legend. So if you see an 11, it means open water. 12 means snow or ice. 21, 22, 23, 24 are all different levels of development. Then we have barren land, we have different forested land, different shrub land, different herbaceous land. And then for agriculture, so they're calling 81 and 82 as agriculture lands. So we want to reproject this layer to just show us the agriculture lands. So just the 81 and 82. So to do that, we're going to reclassify our raster. Now, when we look a little bit more in depth at our raster, when we right click on that layer in our little table of contents over here, you'll notice there's no attribute table. So when we're dealing with our vectors, we have an attribute table, but when we're dealing with our rasters, we don't. So what we could do is do a reclassify. And again, there's a couple ways to get to it. So we can go to the toolbox, to the search field, clear that out, start typing in the word reclassify. And remember, we're not interested in the vector, we're just interested in rasters. So here's where grass comes in, why we wanted to open it with grass. So here's this r.reclass. So that's the tool we want to use. So we're going to double click on that. For the input layer, it should automatically load in your raster, or you can navigate to it. And now you can either load in your file with the coding, or you can type it all here. So a lot of times it's just easier to make your own text file. And here's what I did. So I opened up Excel. I told it 0 through 80 equals 0. So that means for any value, remember we saw values like 11, 12, 21, 22, 23, 24. So any value between 0 and 80, we're telling QGIS we want 0. We're not interested in it. For any value it sees as 81 or 82, we want to call it a 1. And then for anything above 83, we're not interested in that one either. So we're calling it a 0. So you could reclassify your rasters any way you want. I'm just giving you the example of saying we're only interested in knowing where the presence of agricultural fields are, and we're not interested in anything else. So I'm making it very simple to start with. And then I saved my file as a text file. So I went File, Save As, and then I called it a text file. So now I'm going to call up this file within QGIS by going to our 3 dots, and I navigate to the NLCD folder where I'm holding my text file. I click on it and hit open. Or I could have typed it all in right here. Either way is fine. Then I want to save it, my results somewhere, all those zeros and ones, I want to save somewhere. So I'm going to go to my 3 dots, save to file, and I'm making sure I'm in my NLCD folder, and I'm going to call it NLCD UTM because we already projected it, and then underscore rec for reclass, and save. And I'm going to let that run. So it's going to go through that whole raster, so that whole gridded raster, through all those values and change them all to zeros or ones, depending on my coding. So that takes a little bit, and it looks like we're done. And now it selected the colors. I can always change the color scheme, but it selected these zeros and ones. And remember, I can always change this by right-clicking on that layer, going to Properties. Let's close out of this message, and I can change these colors to whatever I want. Now, let's say I'm only interested in the University of Maryland. I'm only interested in agricultural lands that are around the University of Maryland campus. So remember, in a previous video, you learned how to use Google Earth to make your own boundary around the University of Maryland. But that came as a KML file. So we need to load that in. So we're going to go to Layer, Add Layer, and that is a vector layer. We'll navigate over to the folder that has our boundary. So I had you all save it as UMD_boundary KML. You're going to add it. Don't worry about this message when it pops up. Let's just close this. Now we're going to tell it the coordinate reference system by right-clicking on the layer, layer CRS, set layer CRS. And if you remember, this was not projected. It was WGS84. So that's our datum and not projected to a system yet. We're going to hit OK and close out of this. Now we want to project it to a matching coordinate system, to a matching projected coordinate system. So we want, and remember this is a vector. So now we're going to type in reclass, and we would reclassify a vector. Another way is going up to this vector and is it tools, geoprocessing tools. Is that where our projection is? Okay, sorry. So under vector, it's under data management tools and then reproject layer. So we click on that. We want to reproject our KML. And for our target, we're going to go to that little globe. We're going to start typing in UTM. And in this case, the datum was WGS84. And we want it to be projected into UTM zone 18. So we hit OK. And we want to tell it where to save that layer. So the projected layer, we find our 3 dots, save to file, and now under that boundary folder, we'll click there. We're going to type in UMD boundary underscore UTM. Hit save and run. And now that's done. We no longer need the original layer, so we can remove that layer to tidy up. Okay, so now we can go ahead and clip or mask out, take our entire raster and just mask out the shape of our University of Maryland boundary. So let's go to mask, and we're masking out a raster. So we'd click on clip raster by mask layer. Alternatively, we could go up to raster at the top and trying to remember what that is, and extraction and clip raster by mask layer. Either way will get you to this. So the input layer is that whole raster, so that NLCD UTM reclass, and we're clipping it by the University of Maryland, the UTM. It already knows the source CRS, it already knows the target CRS. Now we just have to tell it where to save the results. So we scroll down to this area with our 3 dots, go to save to file, and now under the NLCD folder, let's call it NLCD underscore UTM underscore rec for reclass underscore UMD. So we remember from just the name of the file, when we use it in the future, we'll remember it's our NLCD layer. It has been projected into UTMs. It's been reclassified, so zeros and ones. It's been reclassified into what we want, which is just the, we're interested just at the agriculture lands. And it's just going to be in the shape of University of Maryland boundary. So we'll hit save and run. We'll give that a little bit of time. And let's see if that is done. Okay, there we go. So I zoomed in, so we're done with that. So that is showing us, so let's see which color is which by right-clicking and going to properties. Let's close out of this message. So that tells us the zeros that we see are purple and the ones that we see are yellow. Okay, so let's say we're interested in learning a little bit more detail about how many zeros and ones we have. So how much of our land is agriculture and how much is not agriculture. So to do that, let's create this report if you will. So let's type in values. Let's see if we have this pop up for, I'm gonna get my picture out of the way here. So under raster, this raster layer unique values report. So let's click on that and navigate to the NLCD UTM Reclass University of Maryland layer. And we will leave this band number. And we can do this as a report or as a table. So let's say we save it as a table. Saved file. And we're going to call this NLCD underscore UTM underscore reclass underscore UMD underscore report. Okay, so we clicked on that. And now you'll see this report, this link to this report over on the right. So let's open that up and read the results. So it's seeing there was a total count of 5,120 pixels. And of those, 4,994 were zeros, so not agricultural land, and 126 were what we considered agricultural land. It also gives us the area in square meters because we projected to UTMs, and UTMs are reported in meters. So that's why we're getting our result in square meters. So this gives us some interesting results that we can play with. There's a couple other ways we can get to this as well. But right now, remember, we don't have an attribute table. So we couldn't just select out the ones versus the zeros. We just have this report and this sort of map or depiction of where our ones, where our agriculture areas are, or where they aren't. Let's say we want to just save the agricultural areas, and let's say we're not interested in the other areas. Well, to do that, we're going to need an attribute table. And to do that, we would have to convert this raster over to a polygon. So that's something we can do in QGIS and also in ArcGIS. So in our toolbox, let's type in raster to polygon. And here we see, under vector creation, we see raster pixels to polygons. So let's click on that. And for our source, we're doing that NLCD UTM reclass UMD. And we are going to leave these as they are. And then where are we going to save it? We're going to save it to our NLCD folder. Now we're going to call it NLCD UTM Rec UMD. Now let's call it poly for polygon. And we're saving it as a shapefile. Hit save and run. And now it's still going to have those values. However, now it's in, you can see the grid. Okay, so I'm going to just have our polygon layer on. Right now it's all in one color. So let's change that to make it more intuitive. Let's right click on this layer, go to properties. For the symbology, let's go to categorized. And we want to select the value. So remember our values, we said zeros or ones. And let's hit this classify button. And we're really only interested in the areas that we designated as zeros or ones. So we're not interested in anything else with any other value. For instance, no data. So now when we hit apply and OK, our color scheme has changed. And it's still the same data. So if we go back and turn on our raster, it's still the same locations as before. So our agriculture areas are still in the same locations, but now it's in a polygon format. So what's nice about this is we can play a little bit more. There's other features we'll use later, but right now, let's say we just want to look at our attribute table, which we now have since it's a polygon. So we right click, we open attribute table, And you'll see on the left, we have these expressions of all these zeros and ones. And again, 5,120. So we have not lost the values. We still have our zeros and ones. So we still have the same numbers of, it was what, 4,994 zeros and 126 ones. So there, you won't see it very often, but occasionally you'll see a 1. And something else you can do now that we're a polygon, we can go to this identify tool and we could click on here and we'll see that now we have a value of 1. Whereas when we're over here, we're seeing values of zeros. So we can click all around our map and see the difference of the values. And something else we can do with our attribute table is we can filter and we could save a layer just with ones or whatever we're interested in. So we could select this and we could set our value so it's equal to 1. And it's seeing 126. And just as we've done in previous lectures, we can save a unique layer of whatever we're interested in. So if I were to unclick the zeros and just click the ones, I can export this. So I can right click on that layer, go to export, save selected features. So right now I've highlighted only the values that are 1, save selected features as, and I want to keep it as a shapefile. And now I could save it to NLCD folder. Let's get to the right folder. The NLCD folder, and I could call it NLCD _ ag only, or whatever I want to call it. And hit OK. And now it'll pop up as its own layer, and it's only the area that has what I'm looking for. And then in future lectures, we'll go over some analysis that you can do. But I wanted to show you some really helpful tools from going from a raster to a vector and some things that you can do with this. So I hope you enjoyed this.